Hey everyone, welcome to the SIG Node meeting on October 14th, 2025. First up, we have Mark and I don't know who the other person is. Dawei?
Yeah, I don't know if Dawei's on here. There's an issue we just wanted to discuss. So for a long time, some background here. For a long time, Windows has been struggling to properly report memory usage with the built-in Kubernetes kind of metrics because on Windows, where swap is pretty much always enabled, both the working set and the commit memory is important, definitely depending on your allocation patterns and everything. And right now, as kind of described in the issue there, um, we only have a way of reporting one of them, and the kind of the like the recommendations that we've been giving for a long time is if you need to monitor both commit and working set memory, use Prometheus Exporter, which has been supported on Windows for many releases here. And I think we do have plans to like address this with a CRI advisor list, the stats only endpoints. But that's been kind of delayed for a long time. So we're wondering if this would be kind of a acceptable approach to get this data to users outside of that. I think especially because I saw some updates on the next phase of the CRI list stats or CRI only stats potentially not supporting Windows. So yeah, just wanted to kind of discuss that and bring this up in the issue.
Yeah, I'm kind of more of a fan of pushing forward with CRI stats. I know like in the KEP we said we wouldn't support Windows. I don't necessarily think it's we won't support Windows. It's that I don't necessarily know if I have the bandwidth to block beta on Windows stats and metrics being reported. So, but I definitely would be willing to work with folks from the SIG Windows community to get that moving forward. I know it has been delayed a long time, and I don't like that either. But I am definitely seeing light at the end of the tunnel with the container D support seeming to be poised for 2.2. And so it would be my preference to sort of focus um, on the eventual end goal rather than having like a sort of intermediary workaround that we then would have to carry, you know, for an independent amount of time because these APIs, these endpoints are not really there's not clear API versioning with them. So basically, once something's in we kind of have to keep it forever. Um, so
Okay,
I
that makes yeah, just from the Windows side, like Windows, the CRI only stats or like the container D support has been in there for many releases, so I don't think there should be any hold up from the Windows side for getting that in. Um and everything. Yeah, just this like an issue the issue like an issue for this has been open since mid 2022, so we just kind of
Yeah,
want to figure out what
definitely.
to do here. If we think that there's a high probability of that going to beta, I think that's probably a good move.
Well, and that's exactly what I want to talk about next also. So, yeah, but I do hear you and I don't want to delay it. I guess let's see how because obviously it's a little bit late now to even go forward with a KEP like this for the 135 timeframe anyway. So let's see how it shakes up in 135. Hopefully we won't have to talk about it again because CRI stats will go beta in 135 and then we'll just, be moving on towards that. If not, then we can talk about it in 136 and see sort of what we want to do about it.
Okay, awesome, thanks. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Um, so that goes on to we have so there's some chatter in the chat about moving some older pieces. I know there were some pieces that were on the agenda that had not been auto forwarded. So Yuan Wang, you're here, and do you want to talk about research pods on container exits?
Sure, yeah. Let me see.
If you need a minute, we can go with Peter's item and then we can come back to this one.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to update everyone on what I'm thinking is the direction of CRI stats. There's a KEP update, and we've talked a little bit about it. There were a couple of open questions in it, and I just want to talk through one specific piece, which I think might be contentious, but like I'm kind of feeling like the CRI. So the current state of the world is the metrics are collected from in two different ways today, depending on your CRI implementation. The qubit sort of like in this kind of hacky way decides which way to collect based on the location of the CRI endpoint, which is not great. But so those two ways are the partial CRI way, which is used for containerd, where basically the CRI stats report, which reports the summary API, is collected from containerd, and then the metrics are collected from cAdvisor. And then there's the full cAdvisor way, which summary API and metric cAdvisor are collected from cAdvisor. And CRI stats KEP is moving towards a world where both of those are collected and reported by the qubit from the CRI instead. And my feeling on the matter, so there's a little bit of...
The KEP, just to be clear, that KEP doesn't eliminate cAdvisor because it only talks about pod level metrics, right?
Correct. Okay. Yes, it's only taking cAdvisor out of the business of reporting pod and container metrics. And so part of the conversation happening in the KEP right now is whether to deprecate and drop support for these two old methods, the CRI, partial CRI collection and the cAdvisor collection, as this KEP goes GA. And my feeling is that it should. And the reason for that is the current way that it is configured in it's not actually configured in the qubit. Like there's no qubit configuration field saying which way to collect the metrics. It's done sort of like in an opinionated way by the kubelet and maybe not in kind of a hacky way. And for this reason, I don't think that exposing this knob as we move towards a world where we're moving away from it is like, it feels a little bit counterproductive. And I think as long as we are diligent as Kubernetes developers, and like I am diligent as an author of this KEP in making sure that the transition between the two ends up being seamless by the time GA happens, then I don't think that we need to keep the old methods around anymore. But that might feel contentious because I know there have been other sort of instances where Kubernetes develop, and like I know Docker Shim is always the one we look back on, where we made a decision in SIG Node and that upset some people and they were mad about it and we got some flack for it. But I think in this case, if we're delicate about the transition period and making sure that the performance is the same, the stats are the same, like everything like stays consistent, which we can do during beta basically is stabilize these metrics and make sure that they are, being collected and reported correctly. Then I think GA could be a good time to drop support for them, especially because I would bet a large portion of Kubernetes users don't actually know how these metrics are collected at all because it's confusing and kind of weird. So yeah, I just wanted to propose that piece of it and see how people feel. Don, go first.
I agree with you. And the only, I want a little bit clarification. When you say the GA drop, you mean just deprecation announcement, right? It's not.
I want to announce the deprecation in beta and then not go GA with this feature until we are ready to drop support.
The only challenge I see it is some of the behavior people might be some customer, okay, some people maybe waiting for the GA, then they will run, right? So that time is a little bit. So that's why I'm totally okay. We are announce the deprecation in the beta, but I do have concern. Just right after GA, then we just drop support.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, and I do wonder, I mean, I feel like part of it, like from conversations that I've had with other Kubernetes developers over time is like the beta GA distinction is not as important to people as like on by default, off by default in a lot of cases. So they just sort of like take whatever defaults and then use those and then turn off stuff that doesn't work for them. So I find myself wondering if like having it be beta on by default and having it work, you know, sort of opaquely will give us enough sort of opportunity to catch problems and things. I'm sure that there is a section of users that are like turn all features off except for GA ones. And I don't, you know, I don't know what percentage of users that is, but I like to think that we could catch the majority of cases outside of that without them. But I hear you. It just to me like feels a little bit weird to announce the deprecation as part of a KEP and then need to announce another KEP or something like some other mechanism to like do the dropping of support. Like that feels a little bit weird, especially when the whole point of this was to like do the full transition from cAdvisor doing a bunch of stuff in metrics and stats to cAdvisor doing none of them for pods and containers. Sergey?
Yeah, typically we announce deprecation when we have a viable and reliable alternative. And I think we will have like policy on deprecation saying alternative needs to be the same level of maturity as original thing. So I mean, just by letter of it, like you need to be GA to deprecate something, so people can switch from one GA to another GA. Here, I wanted to clarify, like we will eliminate cAdvisor endpoint, right? So the whole endpoint will be gone on kubelet. And because endpoint will be gone, it probably will need, like, it's not what Sasha wrote in a comment in the chat that saying that internal implementation doesn't matter. We changed some APIs as well. Like it's
actually
more than,
sorry, a small little correction. And this wasn't actually reflected in the KEP, but this was this was a change that was done a little while ago, kind of opaque, like a code change that we made. Basically, actually, the current approach is not changing the endpoint location. It's just changing the source of the endpoint. Like currently, the kubelet, if it notices that CRI stats is enabled and it's, or like, you know, the pod and container stats from CRI KEP, and it's getting the metrics from the CRI, it is actually just proxying that directly to the metrics cAdvisor endpoint rather than having cAdvisor report that endpoint. So currently it's actually just like being translated in the background. And I think that we want to keep that. I can imagine a world where we want to one day maybe introduce a kubelet configuration or even just propose like a formal like deprecation of that old endpoint and do a new one, like who knows. But like I think it would be basically analogous to report like what cAdvisor formerly did from CRI and call it the same metrics cAdvisor, even though it's not actually, it doesn't have cAdvisor in the path at all of like metrics collection. I think it's better to keep that old endpoint than like force this transition and make people switch and like break a bunch of people. So that's actually the current approach of the KEP. I'm open to talking about that, but if we went forward with what we're doing today, it actually would not incur that sort of forced transition.
if it's all the same and all the metrics the same, all endpoints the same, then I don't think it requires. I mean, at that point, the only question we need to answer is what do we do with CRI Dockerd or some other alternative runtimes, and how much try we need to do to give them as a warning. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, the biggest thing that I think will delay this deprecation or this dropping of support is support for like the support lifecycle of versions of containerd lower than 2.2. So like, I think that that will be the biggest bottleneck in this process. And I'm personally okay waiting for the GA and the full deprecation and dropping, or I'm okay waiting for the full dropping and also in my mind tying the GA to that if we wait for that to go all the way through, because yeah,
so that's why I suggest separate the GA from the complete dropping.
Okay.
Because then give us, because the GA give more stronger boost. That's the SIG Node direction, right? So I just don't want to repeat. Like Doc Sherm's a little bit in story because we announced those kind of things, but at that time we announced long time back, and we delay, and after a couple years, people already forget of the context. A lot of people, right? So that's why. So it's unnecessary. But this is different. I think it should be handled. But I do concern. There's the unseen dependency, and then we cause the unnecessary support maintenance burden for us.
I will say the one reason that I'm like still sort of like against, and I'm happy to move in that direction if we agree that that's the direction, but the one remaining reason that I'm like I don't want to GA this without dropping support is it means we have to introduce a new kubelet configuration field, allowing people to turn off this feature after the feature gate goes away. So currently the feature gate is the only way of changing it. And then we would have to introduce that. And I don't love that because I don't want to have to carry that, which is why it to me makes sense to just go for the dropping of support when we go to GA.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay.
You
changed my mind.
I love to argue.
I hate those. Yeah.
Implementation detail. I just wanted to talk about implementation detail. Cover that. And that might be relative to how long it's going to take to get out. So when we process metrics today, specifically for pod metrics, if the pod exists, we're supposed to return back any metrics we get, right? We can collect. If we have an error in collecting any of the metrics today, what we're going to do is just log that error, but in return what we were successfully able to return. Okay. Although we have metrics for error counts, we don't have metrics for error collection counting. We could probably use some process for making that happen. And until we did, if we do it in cry only, then there may be a difference in, capabilities between the cVisor implementation and the
that's a good point that you bring up. And I'm definitely like putting on my cryo maintainer hat. I'm happy to talk about that. I don't necessarily think we, as now wearing my SIG Node hat, need to talk about that here because it is now up to the CRI, and specifically cVisor does not have that mechanism. So cVisor is also optimistically trying and failing, and if it fails, it ignores or it logs and goes away. So like when I think about getting the one-to-one between CRI and cVisor, that's my focus here. But I definitely agree that like an error count could be useful, and it's something that we should have the same interface for, so that we don't have this dissonance between the two. I definitely agree.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There is a possibility of a dissonance between what Containerd can collect and what cVisor was collecting using other means.
Yes, that's true. And I think from SIG Node's perspective, the gate of what is a conformant metric and what is not is basically through the conformance test that we have. And we have the EDE node test right now. And eventually I think we should also have actual full EDE that claim conformance. We can talk about that later. But I think that will allow each CRI implementation to do their own thing with what they actually report. But at the end of the day, if they want to claim conformance, then they would have to have that set of metrics.
Yeah.
And we could always add more metrics to that in the future. We have that, ability. So it sounded like I convinced Don. I don't know if I convinced Sergey yet. I haven't heard that yet. How are you feeling about tying the GA of this feature to the dropping of support so that we don't have to add this additional configuration field?
I'm fine. Like, as long as it's just internal implementation, I thought we will be dropping cAdvisor endpoint, but if we don't, then it's like not even a change. Like it's just
and that's kind of
implementation detail.
I don't even
announce that we need.
Yeah.
The only announcement we need to make is to say that CRI that doesn't support it, we will need to use cAdvisor, and cAdvisor is already GA, so we can announce this deprecation as soon as like 135. I think it's fine.
Cool.
So in this case, maybe for the GA requirement, we need to add more like the production signal, like roll out this beta feature to the real production, and then we got those feedback loop.
Yeah. So I think something that I've added just recently to the KEP is like in 134 we introduced the CRI losing support metric that the kubelet reports, basically seeing like this was for the C group from CRI, C group driver from CRI thing. I think we can use the same mechanism and say like in, I don't know, probably 139 or maybe 140, Kubernetes 139 or Kubernetes 140. We say, we can talk about the exact version, but like at some point we'll need to drop support for any containerd version that does not report these metrics. And we can use that kubelet metric to say, okay, that's the point at which this version of containerd will lose support for Kubernetes and users will have to move. But we can say when the GA of that, like that's, I don't feel hasty to get the GA. I want to personally get to beta. That's my like main thing, and get this on and get people using it. So, and I think that will provide a path for people like admins to be able to see that they, that this transition is happening. And then we use documentation and, announcements and stuff to sort of fully cover our bases there. Cool. All right. So thank you for that. We can finish the conversation in the KEP update, but it sounds like we have some consensus there. So great. On to Yuan.
Sure. Yeah. I don't have too much to update. The KEP is sent out. I think pretty much all the details are inside the KEP. So feel free to take a look there. There's just one thing I might want to call out is that we don't want to support remounting volumes for this KEP. Just want to see if there are other considerations in the community here.
Can I just recap? Yeah, is it okay if I'll recap for everybody what this KEP is about?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Johan, do you want to do it or I can?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So yeah, we have this KEP called restart pod. Basically, when a container exits, we want to trigger the whole pod restart, which means we will terminate all the containers and restart them in order, including init containers, sidecar containers, and regular containers as well. So this helps us with LLM training workloads, with some watcher sidecar patterns, and also ensures a better, cleaner restart. So one of the things is we want to focus on the container restart, so container level restart. So we will kill all the containers, but we will not clean up all the sandbox. We'll keep the sandbox, including network namespace, pod IP, devices, as well as all the volumes. My question here is checking with the community to see if you see the need to clean up the volumes and sandbox. Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was to keep as much as possible running, and like sandbox will be intact. All MTDs will be filled up with something, but we don't believe it should matter for containers. They should be designed to be re-entrant if you use this feature. The only question is we hit a few cases where remounting would be desired. Specifically, it's on GCS fuse. Like there is a fuse technology. Like you can provide a volume backed by a process, and this process may run as a sidecar. And then when you kill this process, you need to remount this fuse volume. And that's the only case we identified when we want to remount one of the volumes in a pod. It's a very specific and niche case, and I believe there are maybe other ways to resolve it, but we're curious, like if you have more use cases that may be interested in remounting volumes, that maybe like if you have more use cases, we can discuss how to express it via API, and maybe API will say like some volumes needs to be remounted and have some special flag on those.
My suggestion is just start this without remount and document this as a limitation for now until there are more clear of the use cases came in, and then we can consider how we are, if really needed, and then we can consider how we are going to address it is required of the API or not require API. Just start with the smaller instead overcomplicate before we see the real use cases.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Sasha?
I wanted to ask how init containers going to be handled, because I remember maybe last year ago or something, about a year ago, it was a discussion what somebody had a special sequence of init containers which either somehow preparing the volumes or, well, prepares the data before the main container starts. So if we are considering restarting the pod and not running init containers, or maybe rerunning in different order, so something similar what Sergey asked about the sidecar, it might be also affecting to prepared volumes. I don't know what kind of corner cases we will step on.
Init containers will be run in the same order as today. So if this restart pod action is triggered, all the init containers will run in sequence from the first one to the last one.
So first of all, you need to onboard to this feature and you need to express the desire to restart the whole pod. And it's explicit API that you need to call. So theoretically, you should be aware of any limitations of your init containers not being re-entrant. But then, as you said, everything will run in order, in the same order as before. So there may be cases like Istio. I remember Istio was modifying an IP table and their init container wasn't re-entrant. I believe they fixed it already by now, but if there is a cases like that, and Kubernetes doesn't guarantee that init containers will run only once. We have cases when kubectl restarts and loses state and reruns the init container. So theoretically, init containers should already be implemented in re-entrant. So I believe it should be handled well. And even without this feature, there are edge cases when it can bite you if they're not re-entrant.
Yeah, but theoretically, we are creating another corner case when the init container might expect empty volume and when it will be some data from a previous pod run. But anyway, if it's explicit opt-in, then yes, it's up to the owners of those init containers.
Thanks.
I just wanted to add that it's basically the question was on we are now introducing a new new way to run this. I was making an assumption that init containers always start on clean state. I think that in the future we could maybe possibly introduce a finalizer action or something that would run a cleanup action before the init containers could be started. So that could still be possibly achieved with API. I don't know if it needs to be discussed now, but is that something what I'm looking for, Alex? Yeah, maybe for later discussion, I'll add a comment in here. Yeah. Sure, yeah, I'll follow up on the cap.
Thanks.
I can follow up in the cap, but just talking about this pattern. Today we have an API called, stop pod. And when we receive that in the container runtime, we iterate through the containers that are currently running, stopping and then killing them, with signals. But we don't do it in any particular order outside of the way they were entered into the pod itself and run, and if they're still running. Okay. So it would probably behoove us to be able to receive a list, an ordered list of the containers so that we can actually iterate through that when we're killing the container, so we know how to do it in sequence. Otherwise, there's going to be two ways to kill a pod. One, the kubelet's doing it, with its own order. And then another way, well, it happens, we just run them in a different sequence. If a stop pod is sent through some other process, like kubectl.
Yeah, but we don't send stop pod. I mean, today we stop every container first and then do stop pod to clean up the rest, like whatever wasn't cleaned up.
Okay.
So in this case, we wouldn't even call stop pod. We will just stop, like delete every container and then recreate it.
Okay.
To Sasa's earlier question, actually on the init container, actually make me thinking. I clearly remember when we design init container, we have the hard requirement. We ask init container be idempotent, right? So if that's the case, I don't think there's the without of this remount, at least without remount capability, I don't think about will cause trouble for init container. This is a little bit, but at least that time Clayton and I design and clearly ask for that should be init container. I'm not sure later because we are kind of reuse the init container for sidecar container, then we relax those requirements. Or because if it's the idempotent container, then remount actually is not a big deal without remount.
Yeah, the tariff is all needs to be idempotent. There are just edge cases when like GCSQs cannot even handle the crash of a sidecar, so it has a bigger problem than that.
Okay, so can we just at least depend on that one? So then people come up the corner cases or caveat to us, and then we can take a look. But at least I just quickly search off the doc. I still think about we are still mentioning this is the idempotent as a container, init container. So we didn't change that requirement.
Yeah, in documentation we said init container will execute at least once, not exactly once, but at least once. And we had problems with, as I mentioned, Istio is most memorable for me because it caused a lot of problems for us.
Okay.
Thanks. I think that makes sense. Helps a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Yuan. Yeah.
Yes, thanks for the update. There are a couple more items on the future, but I don't know if anyone who had them are here. Does anyone want to run through anything? If not, then we can adjourn early. Kep freeze is on Thursday or Friday, depending on your time zone. So get your Kep updates in and get your reviews in. And we have we have like 40 some Keps. So, and we're poised for another really productive Kep season. So great work, everyone, so far. And let's keep it up. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Right.
Thank you.